We're gonna do Q&A. And I'll start. I'm Caran Smith. I work for AIM. AIM is an employers association. We have 2,400 members across 7, 8, I don't even know how many states anymore, but we have locations in 4 states: Florida, Illinois, Missouri, and Indiana. I help our mostly HR folks, sometimes CEOs, sometimes CFOs, sometimes who knows, members in Illinois and soon to be Indiana. So one of the things I get to do is travel around state and talk to everybody and like talk about what's going on in the workforce and how are you dealing with trends and changes and what can we do to help you. So that's kind of what I do. So I'm going to kind of go through all of you and just work what you do. That'll help me kind of tailor the discussion interested in. Melanie, do you mind starting?
Yeah, I'm Melanie Bautista. I am the programs and marketing coordinator here at the Chamber. And I'm the one who pretty much oversees our business education. So I'm happy you all came today.
I'm Kyle Mueller. I'm with McLean County Government, Human Resources, Recruiting and Training Specialist, but with all areas of HR.
You can't get out of it.
Rachel Neisler, Human Resources Manager for McLean County.
Okay.
I'm Taylor Williams. I'm also with McLean County. I'm an attorney for the Civil Division.
Oh, go ahead. Go this way.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, I'm Donna Sauer. I'm with the Mosquito and Pest Authority. I am the community relations director, so I get to make sure everybody knows who we are and what we do. But I also kind of have a say in who we hire, so I like to get to know more about that.
Okay.
I'm Terry Weisenhunt. I'm with AZ HR Hubs. We are an HR company. I'm a recruiter.
Oh, awesome.
I'm Heather Rogers. I work for Unit 5 School District. I'm the Director of HR.
5 Director of HR. You recruiters, are you having as many folks applying as you used to be, or are you hiring as many folks?
Funny you say this, just did a posting for a simple administrative assistant position, like overnight, 100 applicants. So there's such a need. Right now, we were getting a flux of resumes that are coming in because I think the job market, people are so needing a job. And what was the rest of the question there?
Have you gotten more applicants? Are you needing more applicants? So have you slowed down your hiring? Has your application level sped up?
It goes in ebbs and tides, honestly. So some of the larger companies, they are saying we need a whole bunch of people, and then all of a sudden they come to a halt, and to the point where unfortunately they end up laying off. And so where you just had us do this massive hiring, and then 3 months later you're telling us it's too much.
We need some career transition.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And yeah, so honestly, the answer is, both. And it's just a tricky time. I'll say that.
Because we're seeing the same thing. Kind of nobody knows what they're to do.
Yes.
Right? How about you? Same thing?
No, not as many applicants as we need. And we average like 25 to 35 job openings at any given time. So
more.
Yeah.
Switch in the way that you recruit. Okay, thank you. I'm just curious because I talk to a lot of people and it just depends on the company, the applicant tracking system they're using, what it is that where they're posting. And then like some companies, it's just better to start doing the grassroots, like back to job fairs. So I've seen a lot of the chambers doing job fairs lately. Okay, sorry.
My name is Ethan Jenkins. I work at Wilbur Group in town. It's a subrogation and law firm combo, and I'm the generalist there. So I generally handle a lot of stuff.
I like it.
I'm at the same company. I'm Sam Brahms. I'm our benefits specialist, but like you said, you just do a little bit of everything. You help with compliance, you help with
Whatever it takes.
solution, whatever it is. Yeah.
I'm Austin Hart. I'm also with the same company. I'm currently an operations supervisor, but have had experience in recruiting and onboarding training as well.
Okay, so you're mostly HR folks, some director level, which is HR because you're hiring. So, okay. So today we're going to talk about managing the generations and employment engagement trends in 2025. And spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about managing the generations. I'm going to say it's still just an engagement issue. Employee engagement is always the issue. It always comes back to that. We can call it whatever we want. Quiet quitting, rage applying, lazy girl boss, whatever the trend name is. But at the end of the day, it's always back to engagement. We get our employees engaged, that makes them more productive, happier, and retain them for longer. So if they're sharing the slides with you, and I believe they are, yes?
Yep.
This is a link to this study that was done of 1,000 managers by Intelligent on what do they deal with and how does it affect them. So 1 in 5 managers have actually considered quitting due to the stress of overseeing Gen Z. Gen Z, don't get mad. When I was Gen X and I walked in, they were stressed out because they had to manage me. So I think we see this same thing when the millennials walked in, same thing. The new generation's coming in, and so we're stressed out because we have to change the way that we are to manage the way that they are. But I will say, for anyone who is in the managing position, someone I saw speaking said it brilliantly. He said, when the big 3 automakers used to put ashtrays in all their cars, and the society smoked, so society wanted ashtrays. When people quit smoking, the big 3 automakers didn't say, no, consumers, you are going to have to keep smoking and use that ashtray, and we're leaving it in there. They said, oh, if our consumers are changing and the things that they want and need are changing, we need to adapt and change the way that we are so that we can meet the consumer's needs. So they took out the cigarette plugs and the ashtrays, and they put in USB ports. And now the little seed containers and radios have come out, and now you can put your phone in and bring your music up, although I will admit that I don't know how to do that. So those are the kinds of things that we're seeing. So Gen Z is going to be the generation that's coming through our workforce, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So whether we want to or not, they have different needs, wants, and things that they expectations, but they're going to be the ones who we're succession planning into the positions. So we need to change our workforce, the way that we manage, so that we can meet the needs of the people who are going to do the work. All right, so what are managers? What's that about? This is the issues they say they're experiencing: frustration, stress, disappointment, increased workloads, need for additional resources, decreased personal productivity, burnout. They're just plain burnout. Aspects that make managing Gen Z challenging. Their work hours, work ethic, lack of initiative, 4 times management, lack of professionalism, communication, resistance to feedback or change, need for micromanagement, picking up their slack. What does this sound like? New people who need training, doesn't it? So are they frustrated with Gen Z, or do they have new employees who lack skills they need for their positions? Okay. Accommodations managers have to make for Gen Z: providing more feedback, micromanaging, adjusting management role style for work-life balance, provide people with work-life balance, allowing more time for work to be completed. Flexible work hours. Anybody else want flexible work hours? I see not Gen Z heads shaking yes, so maybe that's not a Gen Z problem. Maybe that's a society problem. We all want that. Reducing the amount of work. So we're all overworked, trying to do more with less. Conflicts. This is issues arising between Gen Z and older employees. Tell me if you see any of these things. Conflicts about expectations, communication issues. They don't communicate the same. They have different priorities. Clashing over working styles, conflicting views on social issues, differing perspectives on DE&I, and disagreements over political matters. Does that sound like your workforce? Things that you're hearing, things that you're seeing. So, but when the silent generation was in workplace, the traditionalists, this is the generation before the boomers. They also said this about the boomers. Hey, we have all these issues that we're dealing with. And these guys are lazy and they're coming into our workforce and they're, a bunch of hippies. So don't want to work. So aren't we seeing the same thing? What we're really seeing is generational turnover. Okay, here's our agenda. So I'm going to argue today, engagement is really the issue that you're facing. It's not it is a clash between the generations, but what we're facing right now is generation turnover, literally a silver tsunami. We have the boomer generation who's been doing most of the work for a long, long time, heading towards retirement. In 2030, all of that generation will be 65 and older. So if they're not already retired, they will be, or they can be, I guess. So why engagement is a key metric is what we're going to talk about. What categories does engagement get broken out into? What are emerging trends and what's influencing employee engagement and the next steps for you to ensure high levels of engagement within your organizations? All right. So why are we talking about engagement? Why are we talking about employee engagement? How many of you do an employee engagement and opinion survey in your organization? You pulse? Do any of you? Rest of you? Nope. Why or why not? I ask because if you don't know what your employees need, how can you fix it? So that's a good reason to do employee and engagement surveys. They're free out there from a lot of places, or you can have Gallup do it, or AIM does it, or whoever. But it's important because you have to measure the metrics so you know where to put the action plan in place. If you're just throwing stuff out there and you don't know what the problem is, how are you supposed to solve it? Okay, so employee engagement is not just a buzzword, it's critical indicator of the organization's health and success. Why? Because if your people aren't engaged and they aren't happy, they're going to be less productive and maybe leave, less retention. Okay. Engaged employees, regardless of generation, doesn't matter. It's all employee engagement. I know we're managing through generational turnover, but these folks are our future leaders, so we got to figure out how to help them. Engaged employees, regardless of generation, are typically more productive, innovative, committed to their work, leading to improved performance and reduced turnover. That's what we just talked about. Monitoring engagement helps you identify areas for improvement, and that will foster positive workplace culture and align your employee efforts, things that you're trying to do to make them happy, productive, and stay with your business objective. Okay, how can we dissect engagement into different categories? So what do your people need? What they need is emotional engagement. So you want them, how do they feel about your workplace, your colleagues, the organization in general? The more positive emotions you can have with your employees, the better off they're going to feel in the workplace, the stickier they'll become. Like they like you, they want your organization to see, they want to come to work. What if you didn't like your job or the people that you worked with? It's not a big motivator to come into work every day and to help your organization to succeed. Next thing, cognitive engagement. So this is intellectual investment in the employees are making in their roles, including problem solving and idea. So a lot of people but are you doing anything to keep them engaged? Are you challenging them? Are you giving them projects? Are you giving them other people to work with? You can help them make those. So how do you cognitively engage your employees? So they're not just sitting there pushing a button like the Jetsons, or not having any interaction engagement at work. Behavioral engagement. So this you can actually observe through your employees' action, such as willingness to go above and beyond, participate in team activities, and advocate for the organization. I'll tell you what, when you have folks and they're like, yeah, let's do that. That sounds good. Oh my gosh. Or they super care about your organization. We don't like what you're doing. We don't like how this is going. This is how we feel. Those people are actually engaged. It's the ones who are like, I don't care, do whatever you want. Doesn't matter to me. They're the people who are on their way out the door. So you think that they're the quiet, nice employees who never complain, but really they're the people who are totally disengaged. All right, so has anyone ever heard of Herzberg, the Herzberg behavioral model? Anybody? It's very old, but it's very pertinent to what happens. Herzberg has satisfiers and motivators, and satisfiers are things that you need in your organization to get engagement. And motivators are things that are really good to have and help keep people highly engaged. So pay, number one, you got to pay them. Sometimes people volunteer and work for free, but for the most of the part, you have to pay them. Safety, you want a safe and secure workplace. People aren't going to want to come in if they're going to get hurt. Healthy and pleasant environment. Nobody really wants to go to a place that's unpleasant. So location of your business. Are you somewhere that's accessible and preferable? Continuity and job security at your business. So we just talked about how they're like, let's hire 100 people. And then 6 months later, let's let them all go because we hired too many people. So that's kind of something everyone's facing right now, is that job security issues. This job's still going to be here. And are they satisfied with their profession? So then the motivators are things, these are where you can really attack engagement. So you got to have these things right. You got to have pay, safety, healthy, pleasant environment, nice location, some type of job security. But then for these ones, these are the things that you can do your employee opinion engagement surveys, or your stay interviews, or your exit interviews, or your, whatever it is that you put on to like benchmark how your employees are feeling about their jobs. You work on purpose. Do they feel like they have a purpose? What are they doing that matters? Does your company employ quality leaders? So there's top two reasons why people will stay in an organization. Reason one, they like their manager. Reason two, they have a work bestie. They have their friends. So there's the top two reasons why people stay. You can ask that in your survey and see. Do they have friends and colleagues? So do they have good leaders? Do they have friends? And is the work challenging? Do the employees at your business treat each other fairly? Do you have any recognition and appreciation initiatives? Do any of you have those, like employee of the month? Or I worked at a place, they had red vest moments, so anybody can nominate anybody in the whole entire company if they just did something nice, helped a customer, helped another employee, helped each other, whatever it was, and then they were recognized. Do they feel like they have autonomy and can be involved, and they feel like there's good communication? Okay, so that's things that you can work on to keep your employees engaged. So why does that matter? 18% boost in productivity, higher customer loyalty, 23% more profitability, fewer workplace accidents. They're all watching out for each other. Lower absenteeism. They actually want to come to work, so they do. And then 43% less turnover. This one, customer loyalty. Have you ever recently called for customer service and got someone who is just not nice at all, like yelled back at you, hung up on you, you went through 15 phone things? This is, if you have happy, engaged employees, they're not going to do that to your customers, which is how you're going to retain your customers. Okay, so the Employers Association, along with some other employers associations, we do a survey. We give our members a survey they can do. And then we kind of organize the results. So here's just a big look at all of those surveys. They put the results together from lots and lots of different companies all over. And the normative data from that. Work-life satisfaction, 79%, a lot of people. Management effectiveness, 79. Employee commitment, this is the norm. Benefits, organizational practices, these are the things that are being pulled. Employee development and recognition, operational effectiveness, communication, senior leadership effectiveness, and pay. Pay. Nobody's happy with pay right now, but we're trying. Okay, so why are we seeing less applications, I would say, or maybe we're seeing plenty of applications, but not a lot of qualified individuals. So we get a lot of applications, we just don't have anybody in there. So let's take a look at the population. So this is a total percent of total population from 16 to 24. This comes from the United Nations Population Division. So I have the United States of America, Eastern Asia, and Europe. And this is, remember, ages 15 to 64. So what we're seeing is actually population decline everywhere. So I said that in 2030, all the boomer generation would be 65 and older, so can retire if they want to, which was 2013 is when they started retiring. So that huge generation that was in our workforce, you see it go up right here. It's many more people in our workforce is getting ready to retire, and people aren't having as many children as they used to. Families don't typically have 6, 8, 10 kids. 2, 3, it's not even normal anymore. 0, 1 is more normal. So you're seeing population decline. And this is in our workforce, 15 to 64. So you really saw that population starting to decline right about here in 2010. Remember I said the boomers started retiring in 2013. So kind of correlating with that. And then here you see it start to really decline in 2020. That was COVID. We all know that was COVID. And you see that everywhere. Declines, not just in the United States, as more people everywhere are having less children. So as the population declines, we have less people. So now here we are, 2025, here's 2030, and every single one of these you see declines. There's a little spike here, 2030, and a decline. In Asia, Europe, steep decline. Now, I will say, in Europe, they have generational models of living. So when people go to college, they move out. Then when they have children, their parents move in with them. So that gives them childcare, which is the other issue that we face in the United States, lack of affordable childcare. Which we'll talk about flexibility and how that will help solve that. But it also takes more workers out of their workforce because they go kind of pseudo retirement and help with kids. Okay, so keep this in mind. So if the declining population wasn't enough, we don't have enough people and all the people who are coming into the workforce are younger. How about declining higher education enrollment? So now the expectation was that your workers came to you and they had some kind of formal education or some kind of training or some kind of skill. And so you're looking for skills out there and get fit to the thing. So you have lots of applicants, but not qualified applicants. This is going to get worse. All right. So now here we are in 2024, and we have some people who are applying to go to school and less 18-year-olds, less college enrollment, because now college is expensive. We don't know how we're going to pay for it. We have the student loan debt crisis. So fewer and fewer folks who are reaching 18 are looking at getting their own educations. They're kind of looking at their employers to provide those educations for them, which back in the boomer generation, a lot of times your employer provided your education for you, or college was affordable enough that you could work for the summer and pay your tuition and your housing with your summer job. So not anymore, totally different society. So we're going to have declining skilled workforce. Do any of you pull this chart? It's a graph of the age brackets within your workforce. You can usually get it from your payroll system or your HRIS system. So this is from the Department of Labor. This is the workforce today in 2025 in the United States. So you see we have 16 and 19-year-olds. This will jump up, we think, because some of these folks aren't working yet, so they're not showing, because these are just the folks that are working. 2024. Hopefully this will jump up a little bit if they're in school and not working. But here's 25, 29. So here's your millennials. 45, 59. So here's your Gen X. 60 says 74. So here's your boomers. And then here's your traditionalists exiting the workforce. So when you're planning your future in the workforce, you're looking at this chart of your employees. This is who's out there in the workforce. You'll see the millennials are coming in and taking over. Boomers are moving out, so you have to start your succession planning for all of these folks. And then these folks right here, as generational wealth is coming from the folks that are here passing on and sending it to the X generation, 55 and 59, they're the 1 in 5 managers that say, I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm out of the workforce. They're retiring too. So I suggest, if you have not already pulled this chart, to go to your organization and pull your work chart and see where your age brackets are within your workforce. So that way you can start to plan, where do you want to put in your actions, your initiatives? Who are you succession planning for? Because we are 5 years away from the folks that have the most knowledge of our organizations walking out the door. So we got to start putting our transition succession plans in. Okay, so that's just a snapshot of the workforce. Now, means that we're going to have this expertise gap intensify. So you got a lot of people in your workforce now, or you should, that have been there for a long time, have a lot of knowledge, have been doing things the way that they want to do them for the long time. And they understand what's coming, what's going on. But they may not want to transfer that knowledge for several reasons. Maybe they're afraid if they transfer the knowledge, you'll let them go. Maybe they just don't get along or agree with the generations that are coming in, millennials, Gen Z, doesn't matter. They just don't want to work with them. For whatever reason that they are not transferring on that knowledge, or maybe there's just nothing in place that sets it up for them to transfer. They've been asked to do that yet. Okay. The retirement wheel, this silver tsunami, poses a risk of losing this information. So if these people walk out the door without transferring the information, whether it be standard operating procedures that they create for their job processes that they're doing, or mentoring and training someone, or cross-training other folks into their job positions, or just us deciding, are we going to replace this position, or do we need to split it up between other people and then give them the training that they need to be successful, not just say, hey, Bob left, so now you're picking up this. So that's kind of what you need to start thinking about as these folks are leaving your business. Or if you're experiencing high turnover rates, already you're experiencing this, as people are leaving your business, how are you making it easier for the folks that are coming in to learn the job and the position? Right? Because what's so frustrating, back to that first slide, they need training. Okay, skill obsolescence. This is the other thing that's getting people. So technical progress is accelerating, and many employees are saying they don't have sufficient training to keep up with the core job skills. So AI is like taking over, right? I don't know if any of you are using it. We use it. It helps a lot, like making presentations, writing emails, changing tone. HR folks are using it to update job descriptions, to create action plans from their employee and opinion engagement surveys, to like all kinds of things. So we have classes just on how to use ChatGPT in HR. Okay, so how do you leverage the collective intelligence tools to bring them together? So you have some folks who are like, man, I don't want to use all this. I just want to retire before I have to deal with it, right? Or they just don't know, or they don't have time because they're so like immersed in what they're doing. They're just trying to get it done, and they don't have time to integrate technology in. So this is the perfect opportunity for you to connect these generations together. And how can you do that? You can do that by mentorship programs. So you need the succession planning. You're trying to get the folks who will be retiring or leaving, or to make sure that if you have turnover, someone's ready for the position. So these mentorship programs can help with that. I went to this awesome CLE on managing the generations, and it was attorneys. And the attorneys, they had some boomer attorneys, like a panel of 3, and they had millennial attorneys, a panel of 3, and then they had a moderator who was a Gen Xer. And so the boomer attorneys and the Gen millennial attorneys were arguing back and forth. Well, you don't like to work hard, boomers are saying. You're always on your phones. You're always, you don't want to come in the office. You want to take time off. You want to do all these things. You have zero work ethic. And the millennials are like, we're on our phone because we're doing the research and we're building PowerPoints and we're setting up presentations and we're submitting documents or we're texting our clients and we are like working harder than you ever thought was possible, but you think that we're just on our phone. And we want to be home because we don't want a 2-hour commute in traffic. That's 4 hours that we save each day that we could be doing other things. So the butt in the seat mentality isn't working for us because why should we need to be here? And why should we get up at 5 a.m. and come in and sit at 7 o'clock and then work all day until 7 p.m. and then leave and go home just to miss the traffic? So there was this like head-on collision. But then as they got through the chat, they actually talked to each other. And they were like, the boomers were like, we don't understand the technology. We don't know what you're using. And the millennials were like, well, let us show you, let us teach you and train you on things that can make your job easier so that you don't have to sit here till 8 o'clock at night either. And then the flexibility, and they started talking about how it'd be nice if they could go home, and then they were actually getting along. And at some point at the very end, after they spent the first hour arguing and the second hour figuring out how to go along, they turned to the Gen X moderator who said nothing the whole entire time, not one word. And they said, well, what do you think? She was like, well, I appreciate you acknowledging my existence. I am still here. And, I agree with both of you, but I'm sick of listening to you argue. That was her take on it. So I thought that was pretty good. But the problem in that situation was that they had never talked to each other and had that chance to mentor each other, communicate or collaborate on anything, because they just completely ignored the other one and said, you're this way and you're that way. Okay, boomer, you ever heard that expression? Instead of actually sitting down and having a conversation. So mentoring programs work. Get them together, get them talking, get them in projects, put them on projects together. Knowledge management systems, implementing platforms that document and store institutional knowledge. So this is your standard operating procedures. Or has anyone heard of Scribe, or I'm trying to think of the other ones, Loom? They're technologies that if you are in your system, you can turn it on and it'll record what you're doing and you just talk through it out loud. Okay, you're going to go to file, blah, 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 and you pick it out and you do this and you do that. And it'll record it. And then you'll have a recording that's your standard operating procedure right there. So then you can use that for something else. Now, and you have to make sure that you're updating things if they change. So put in some kind of every 3 months, have someone assign it to them to double check. You'd be surprised at how much Gen Zs love the technology and will be like, okay, let me just watch the video and make sure that's the way we're still doing it. And if not, we'll update it. So that could be something that you could assign to them as a task that would challenge them intellectually, get them using their knowledge and skills base. AI powered tools. This is going to come into play. They are saying that AI in 10 years will change the way that we do work in the same way the industrial age changed the way that we did work over the course of 100 years. Or AI, that 100 will be 10. Okay. And I am still learning on all the things about AI. In fact, I get to pick my own professional development. That's something that my organization does. Instead of telling me what I need to do, they ask me, what would you like to learn? It's a novel approach, I said, man, I want to learn more about this because I'm overworked and how can it, slow it down? So I get to do the AI plus HI, human intelligence, not HR, human intelligence certification through SHRM. That's my goal for this year. Okay, so this is going to help people identify knowledge gaps and suggest target training. So there's a lot of large organizations out there now who are not even developing their own training programs. They're having AI look at their training programs and develop training programs for them. So those kinds of things are what you're going to be able to.
How does that work? I'm a bloomer.
Bloomer? Is that like a Bloomington boomer, bloomer?
No. I'm a late bloomer. So how does that work to make changes?
Training?
With training?
Training, yes. Okay, so a lot of companies have these learning and management systems. So they're like training systems that they put all of their professional development in. And for certain job categories, all of the folks have to go on the learning talent management system. For a Fortune 50, we had one. And so if I hired someone who was going to be like a mechanic, they had like all this OSHA training and all this other training that they had to go on the LMS. So when I was hiring them as the HR, I was assigning them training in the LMS. Now the LMS will look at it through AI, will look at the training of the job categories. And if there's overlap or if there's something else that's in there, and then they can say, this person will need this training to develop this role, or this training to develop this role. And then it can suggest the training or even assign the training to that person for the next step in whatever their position is. Or maybe they want to go into another position. So that's the other thing, which I don't have in this presentation, is a lot of companies now when they're doing professional development, because the Gen Zs and the millennials like to be challenged and maybe don't want to stay in the same position. Because it used to be you get in a position, you're the knowledge expert and you're that person for your entire career. The younger generations don't want that. They want to be challenged. They want to do something else. So when you're setting up their professional development plans, or even when you're trying to attract them to your company, you can say, we're going to hire you for this role, which you could transition from this role into this role, into this role, into this role, into this role, and eventually into this role. And so if they get burnt out in their position that they're in, or they don't like it, or they're like a good employee that you're going to lose because they don't feel challenged, you can see if you can transition them into another role, especially with neurodivergent people. They like a lot of change, or they like no change at all, depending on which side that they're on. So these are like things that you can think about for professional development. And the LMSs, some of the LMSs that you can get now will work with AI to predict what the training should be to get people into whatever position they're moving forward in. So it's new, just starting to use it technology. Okay, so I'm going to talk about loneliness as a business risk. Loneliness is important, not just for your remote workers, but for your internal workers at all. Because remember, the two things that'll keep your employees the longest are, do they like their manager? They talk to them. Are they connected? Or do they like their friends? But if they're lonely, then what's keeping them there? Inside or outside? It's harder with the remote workers because there's no water cooler talk and they can't make friends, even in other departments, because they never even see those people. But it happens inside your workforce too. So globally, 1 in 5 employees report feeling lonely in their workday. If you guys want to read these reports, these are all links. So when you get the PowerPoint, you can pull them up. Age factor, younger workers are particularly effective. 45% 18 to 25 report experience loneliness. Why do you think that is? 18 and 25, they're new, they're young, they're lacking education and experience. They're coming into your workforce. How are the folks that are there treating them when they walk in?
Like they're young and stupid.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. TikTok. So this is the reason that the 18 to 25-year-olds are feeling a little bit lonely, right? Maybe let out, set back, pushed off.
And that's not really anything new.
No.
We always said,
the nurse going into the hospital, watch out, they're gonna eat their young. And I'm like,
Yes. And not just the hospital, I would say every
yeah,
place. But
and they feel threatened. I think some staff that are there probably feel threatened.
maybe a little.
True.
Or there's been really high turnover with, what were we calling it? The Great Resignation.
Yeah.
So why should I even bother learning your name? You're not gonna be here 2 weeks from now anyway. Imagine if you were the employee that walked in and the people who were supposed to be training you, taking care of you, helping you, were like, well, we'll see if you even make it the next 2 weeks. Like,
Yeah.
so think of that. This is what your employee's facing. Now, what can you do to help with this, right? You're all HR in some fashion. How many of you, let's do a poll. How long is your onboarding? Your onboarding, like not the I-9 stuff, but you bring people into the organization and then what happens? Like a week-long training? Do you talk about your culture, your mission, your vision? Have any of that stuff?
Yeah, the general
Yep.
orientation is
Orientation?
items. But we really try to branch out the orientation experience we allow. I know, so. Welcome thing, so we have our mug that we stuff in it.
Yeah, throw a present here. Welcome to the club.
Yeah, one of our cheap pens. Oh, no, this is, but trying to do some of those things more.
How long does that last?
Um, we have to do about two weeks in-house and then core group of our folks work in their homes. And so we've got to do, it takes sometimes up to 3 months to get.
So you check back in with them?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay. How about everybody else? Orientation, onboarding, there's a big debate on which, but onboarding, I would say, includes the little piece of orientation, and then after you turn them off to their managers, is anybody checking in on them? Like, is there a formal process?
Fortunately, our company is small enough that we're pretty, it's, we're always there kind of, even though we're all remote. So that helps, but
Somebody's calling them,
Yeah.
talking to them.
the actual training though is not very long. That first part.
Okay, actual training doesn't have to be that long, as long as they have the skills that they
Okay.
need, yeah, to start the job. But we've seen a lot of success with our members. We had someone come in and talk like an hour just on a station like this, just on onboarding, where they set up like a cadence. They actually worked with the senior leaders who were gonna be with the folks that they were sending out to, we'll call it the floor, the office, whatever. And said, how often do you check in with them, and assigned them like a weekly check-in, like a sit down, 10 minutes. They gave them 3 questions to ask, what do you need from do you feel like you've been properly trained, and do you have everything that you need? What else do you need from us? What else do you need to succeed? Is there anything else I can do? So, and then they would have their HR folks reach out at 2 weeks, at 4 weeks, at 6 weeks, at 12 weeks, at 3 months, every month after that for a full year, just to make sure. And that increased their retention, because the people would actually say, there is something that I need, or I am having a problem with this, or whatever. Because if they walk out and you do an exit interview, if you can get them to do an exit interview, or are they going to be truthful in an exit interview, you missed that opportunity. So for the onboarding, maybe think about back from HR folks that say, well, is that going to get put on HR? Yeah. Take someone in HR, like employee engagement, representative who has a task once a week to sit down for 4 hours and call everybody who's new. I don't know how big your organization is. It might not take that long. And call everybody who's new on this list and say, how you doing? Anything we can get for you? Any training that you additionally need? Anything, blah, blah, blah. Like, it won't take that long. And if you can retain cost of hiring and the cost of replacing are expensive. So anyway, so loneliness is a risk, because this is a way that you lose people. So is work from home the cause? Well, remote workers they often experience higher levels of loneliness just due to the face-to-face interactions. And then Gallup found that 25% of remote employees reported feeling lonely compared to only 16% of on-site workers. So I had a remote job that didn't exist before COVID. So I lost my job, COVID. And then a job was created because of COVID and they hired me to do it, right? And I worked for this amazing company that had like 4,000 attorneys across the United States and all kinds of support staff. And they would, they were so concerned about us not being connected because the firms, the little groups, always had happy hours and everybody go out, and that's how their engagement, like connection, worked with their employees. But for all us remote workers all over 50 states, they're like, what do we do? So they would hire companies that would like get together with us on a Tuesday at 2, and they'd send us a little kit, and the little kit would have terrarium stuff in it or painting stuff or whatever it was. And we would just sit together and like do this little project that meant nothing and talk to each other about like what we were doing, what we were experiencing, what we were working on, that kind of stuff. And so that really helped out. Like just maybe once a month, we would do something like that just to kind of connect. And then we form little groups that we could connect in outside of that. So it was very, very helpful. In-office workers, they have more spontaneous interaction opportunities, but they can still be lonely because that's why you want someone to call and check in on them. If you have the people who they're working with, just excluding them, and they never get into that like connection. So for workplace culture, which is the problem that you're trying to solve by working on your employee engagement or inadequate communications. So just know that's out there. What's that impact of loneliness? Loneliness will impair your decision making. You're just like, have you ever been depressed and you're just like, man, I can't think right now. Like I don't want to. Creativity. So why am I doing this? Nobody even cares about me. It impacts your creativity. And that could lead to diminished individual and team performance. So you really want to, it seems silly, right? Who cares if they're lonely? This is work. You're just supposed to do the work. Well, the better they are connected to the other folks within your organizations, the better they'll work together, the higher their productivity. Turnover rates. Lonely employees are much likely to quit their jobs. So we humans are communal animals, and we like other people. We like to be together and talk to other people and hang out with each other for thousands of years. Then the financial costs we just already talked about. Turnover and absenteeism. Those are things that contribute to your bottom line. Okay. 2025, work from home. Flexible work schedules are in. So everybody's calling everybody back to the office right now, right? And you're like, come back to the office. And I really think it's like a quiet layoff, because if you decide not to come back to the office, then you have no option but to get another job. But employees themselves who are not going back to the office because they want that flexibility that they've had working remote. But newer employees that are coming in want that camaraderie, like they were stuck at home in school and like basically isolated. So they want to be able to talk to people. So what's the happy medium that we can give them? 2 days a week in the office, 3 days a week work from home. Flexibility, you pick any 2 days. If you need to go home, whatever that is. Some positions we can't do that. I know government entities, sometimes you're mandated to have two people in this position, 9 to 5 statutory. Can't get around it. Nothing you can do. Manufacturing companies, well, you're gonna have to be there to do the work. It's very physical, right? But what can we do from a flexible workplace standard for all of these? How about 4-day work weeks? So I have had to talk to so many people about their flexible scheduling, whatever reason it was, including where you had statutory requirements of a 9 to 5 person. But what if you could make that schedule for those two people 4 10-hour days? Then you're covered. You have someone in the office Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, And then you have someone in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They have an extra day. That still works. You're still keeping whatever the requirement is, or half days, or something, like half days on Fridays. Some folks are using flexible scheduling, like you have to work 40 hours a week. This was the job I had remote. They're like, we want you to put in 40 hours a week. We know when you're on the computer and when you're not. We're monitoring it. We need you to get this work done. Here's your KPIs. If you work at midnight, we don't care. If you work at 7 a.m., we don't care. If you work at whatever. So they would literally have us log in, punch in a time or whatever. It was billable hours. Punch in something and then do our work. But if I was in the middle of like whatever I was doing and my brain was just like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm done. Then I could go take 2-hour walk on the beach. I lived on the beach during COVID, not gonna lie. Like remote work came in. I was like, oh, there's beach property that's for rent. I'm out. So, but then I could go walk on the beach for 2 hours, come back and finish whatever it was. As long as I met whatever project deadline they were giving me, they didn't care. So that's like any flexibility. As long as you put your 40 hours in, that just becomes an administrative task for HR to figure out how they're going to manage that. Like watching people, because that could be possibly, what's the word I'm looking for? They might abuse it. So, 4-day work weeks, productivity hacks. So some people might have more work to do. How can they improve their time management, use AI? This one's kind of funny, mandatory hammock breaks. So I don't know, the tech industry was big on like the sleep pods or whatever. And it was the same thing that I was saying, I could work as long as I put in my 40 hours, got the projects done. Then, you know, I could like take a nap in the middle of the day or whatever. So just kind of funny. 4-day work week studies. Have any of you guys heard these studies of the 4-day work weeks? Like the UK did a study, American did a study. There's actually it's a California senator, but I can't remember his name. He wrote a bill and put it forth to Congress and said, hey, Americans are stressed out and overworked, and this would solve the problem, and here's why. So this is actually gaining traction. If you haven't heard about it, just Google 4-day work week studies. There's quite a few of these studies that have been done where they showed that it actually does increase productivity and decrease stress and like all kinds of things.
Are they doing 40 hours or are they doing 32?
Some are doing 32, depends on who,
They don't
what,
get
yeah.
Hey, that's even.
They don't get any pay, but a lot of people don't mind. So there's like manufacturing environments who did, they went to, it's like a weird schedule, but 1 week they end up working 36 hours and next week they end up working 48 hours, or
Right.
sometimes they just lose a whole day of pay. And so it just depends on the organization if that'll work for you, which is why you want to like take a look at your group, maybe do a poll, a survey, sit down, have an all hands meeting, talk to them about it and see what would work, just to give them flexibility. There's 100 ways to work this out. So for nurses, 4 12-hour days, then 4 days off. You could figure out a way to schedule that. They would like having 4 days off, because I know nurses work a lot. Okay. 4-day work week pays off how? Nearly a third of US workers put in 45 more hours a week. We work the most out of everyone. I was in India for I was doing yoga teacher training. And so I went to Rishikesh, India for a month to do yoga teacher training. This is right before COVID. So I took a month off right before I lost my job when I came back. But I took a month off and I went over to India, and I was sitting there during COVID. And there was a couple other Americans with me, but we had people from Denmark, people from Spain, people from, I'm trying to think all the countries. There was tons of people from all these different countries. And when COVID hit, we actually had to back up our flight 3 days to get ourselves out of India before they shut flights down when this happened. But they said, you Americans, you're going to kill us. That was the whole, everybody from any other country except for Americans, to us, couple of Americans that were in there said, you're the ones that are going to kill us because you love to work. You work all the time. You're always working. You won't stay home. You won't whatever. And all of us were like, we don't want that. But if we don't do that, we lose our jobs. That's not us. That's our society. So, which is true. American workers are putting in more hours. So and that's the argument that's being made, like, how can we make our country less stressed? 40 work weeks. Here's what these studies have shown. British companies working 4-day work weeks, less productive, the same production, didn't really change anything. Slightly improved, significantly improved. Look at that. It's like 40, almost 50% were improved, worked less, no drop in productivity. So how about this? Sleep deprived, 43% after only 14%. I did work a job in HR where I worked Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or that's what they sold me. I actually worked Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because it's HR. And then when I worked on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it was 17-hour days. I had to be in before everyone else. And if something came up, I was there until it was resolved. So, and then on Monday, I would go home and sleep the whole day. And then I would have Tuesday, Wednesday, and if I didn't have to have something come up, Thursday. And it was my favorite job I ever had. That position was eliminated. We're all trying to do more with less, but it was working because the retention rate for our other HR staff worked 4 10s. Then our weekend staff worked it was supposed to be 3 12s, but it was a little more than that. But it worked. It kept that position filled longer than when they were trying to make them work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, like over the weekend, but 5 days with days on either end. Okay, so think about how you can change your workforce to give your folks a little bit more flexibility, because the generations that are coming in, and I really don't think it's a Gen Z thing or a millennial thing. I think it's a United States of America thing. We want more flexibility. Millennials are changing the way that they thought about work. I'm a Gen X. I'm changing the way that I think about employment, and that started before COVID. Okay, what do you have to think about making this change? Why are you making it? What is it that you want out of it? Increased productivity, more flexibility, retain your staff. Usually it's increased productivity, all of these. Retain your staff, and then you're giving them what they want. How are you going to measure success? Knowledge economy presents different challenges in production. That's what I was just talking about. Sometimes production people, you have to have them there, and often they're living paycheck to paycheck, so they might not want a 32-hour work week. They need the 40 hours, right? So how does that work out? Does it benefit everybody? Is this just benefiting a subsection? Then you're going to get the blowback from those folks that aren't getting the same benefit. So make sure you're understanding how it benefits. How about client and customer expectations? So you can't have everybody off on Friday, right? Some people are going to have to work, but you'd be surprised when you start working on the schedules and talking about this and working on it with your workforce. You might have some random person who's like, yes, I would love every Wednesday off. That would be fine. So crazy enough. Work 2 days. In fact, my mom was that person. When she got older, she had worked the same place for 38 years. So she could take 1 day a week off, and she worked in a physical job. So she would work 2 days, take a day off, work 2 days, have 3 days off, work 2 days. That way her body could recover. She's older. So, you know, for her, working 2 days, having a day off, working 2 days worked. And then how does it fit for your industry? So you're thinking hospitality, nursing, you got to have staff all the time. You guys are 9 to 5s, right? For the most part. Know about the rest of you guys. 9 to 5s,
Yeah.
9 to 5s. So how would that work in your offices? Okay. Steps to implement. Here's what you're going to need to know: your processes, resources that you have, and then setting KPIs for measurable. Like, what are people doing? What are their expectations? And how are you measuring that to make sure, especially if you have those remote workers where you're like, work whenever you want. You're going to need that to know they're actually doing the work. Calendar domination, setting those schedules. Then it's going to be harder with communication, because if you have Monday meetings and you have no Monday person, they're working Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you got to make sure that you're using channels of communication that everybody gets to. You have everyone working different schedules. culture and employee buy-in, don't just throw this at them. You're gonna want to talk to your employees and say, hey, we are thinking about, what do you think about this? And usually you can find those through your EOSs. I just sat down with a member the other day, and that is literally what came out of their EOS, is that flexibility in the workplace was the number one thing. And their other issue was lack of affordable childcare, which if you provide flexibility in your employment, it's going to be easier for them to find childcare. So I had a child, I was a single mother. I worked the weekend shift so that on Monday I could get up, take my kid to school, then drive an hour to go to college. I was continuing education, come home, pick up my kid, and I only had to find Friday transportation and care, after school care. That's it, because I work 12-hour days on a Friday. So talk to your employees, and then that will help you design your time. And then physical environment. So it will depend on where your people are at, what will work best for them. All right, impacts on engagement for hybrid workers. So hybrid is sometimes they're in the office, sometimes they're not. Hybrid workers, engagement rates are 35%. They're the highest because they have that communication that they're looking for, that connection with their team, they, you know, and their supervisors, but they also have that flexibility so that they can get the things that are in their life done. Life is hard. Fully remote workers are engaged at 33%. So all of you CEOs are calling everyone back to the office. On-site workers are only engaged at 27%. They're the lowest engagement. They're the most stressed. They're the most overworked. Productivities, remote workers are found to be 35 to 40% more productive than their in-office counterparts. Link. And then retention rates. Bureau of Labor Statistics says hybrid work models have associated with 33% reduction in employment attrition. So it's working. When you give them some flexibility, they'll stay. I don't know how many times, and I don't want to say how old I am, but you do see the gray hair. Those of you on camera probably can't see it, but I don't know how many times people lost their jobs because they had to choose between their kids and their job. And this is a different society where when my mom had me, if I was sick, I could go to the nurses station or whoever we had at our school, and they'd let me sit in there all day. So my mom could stay at work. When I had kids, somebody had to go pick them up. And it wasn't me because I was working, it was grandma or someone. But if you were the only one, you have to go pick them up. Now you don't go pick up your kids. DCFS or whatever you want to call Child Protection Service is picking them up for you. So society has changed. We need to be more flexible and understand that some people have commitments that they have to handle. And are you going to lose a good employee because you couldn't give them some flexibility?
We had to take our kids into the hospital, and pediatric floor would watch them. If they were on low census, they had to watch them so we could work.
Yep. Yeah. Well, there's a school. And I don't know why, but
Good anymore.
it used to be that the community colleges would have early childhood education development
Mhm.
in their schools, and then that was like a cheap. And there's not as many that do it anymore. But there is a school, I think it's Pekin, Illinois. They put early childhood development education in as one of their career development programs, and then they gave their teachers $100 weekly fee for childcare, which is cheap, $100. So that's how they solve their problem that they had with teachers. So they have teachers.
School in the suburbs do that.
Your high school does that too? Yeah. So there's things that we can like do, provide that kind of flexibility, help our folks out. Even like stipend for childcare goes a long way. I know it's a family friend, but she had 3 little kids and she worked for a government agency, but she was like a scientist or something. And so private sector wanted her, they were paying her $5,000 a month stipend for childcare. Because they were working her 1 million hours, but she's like, I can't work for you because what I would have to pay in childcare versus my flexible job. They're like, okay, fine, we'll pay you, so they were paying her tucker. All right, the collapse of career assumptions. What time is it?
It is 12:10.
Well,
20 minutes.
20 minutes. Thank you. I'm often really bad with time. The collapse of career assumptions. So I touched on this earlier. Folks used to be, you'd get into a position, you'd stay in that position for 30, 40, 50 years. And that was where you were at, unless you went up 1 or 2 positions, but still the same thing in your life for your entire life. Well, we have 2 things happening. One, people aren't going to school as much as they used to. So that's the breakdown of the paper ceiling. And then the workforce is rethinking the way that they want to work. Maybe they don't want to do the same thing for 30 or 40 years. And honestly, they're thinking, I'll get a 3% raise if I stay here, but if I jump ship, I might get a 10% raise and more skills. And have you heard of boomerang employees? Where your employee jumps ship so that they can go learn something new, make more money, but then they come back and you hire them back because they have additional skills that are relevant to your workforce. You know they were a good worker, and all of a sudden you're willing to pay them a little bit more. So all these things, atypical career paths. So it's not you go into something and you're going to be into that. I'm on my 4th career, folks. I have been a manager. I have been an HR person. I've been an attorney. And I don't know what this is. This is like an advisor. So I just talk to everybody all the time, make sure they're happy. So atypical career paths, then other things that are happening in careers. People are taking mid-career breaks. They're burnt out. They're done. So they're like, there's like this whole thing going on now where it's like, I hope I'm hit by the layoff so I could take time off. And like people want to be laid off, where it used to be a scary thing. It's like, whoo, I'll get paid for 6 months and I can stay home and relax. I'm so burnt out. So mid-career breaks, there's people who are out there hiking like the PCT or the whatever, all the HCT. They're like big long trails that take 3 or 4 months. So they'll actually plan this in to their career and say, okay, I'm saving this much money. Here I am in my career. I got this much in my house and this much in my investment. I've saved up this much money. I'm going to take 4 months off and go hike the PCT or go travel the world or go whatever, and then come back and get a job. And I can be off for a whole year because I planned it out. So mid-career breaks, you might lose people. It has nothing to do with you or your organization. They're just tired. It's YOLO. You only live once, so they don't know. They just want to do it. No, retirement is not guaranteed. Rising retirement ages. So you have folks that did not make enough to retirement or are afraid to rely on Social Security or whatever it is. They are staying in the workplace longer. And then the agency itself for Social Security has raised the age to 67. So for me and most of you. Contingent work. So maybe they're doing their side gigs instead, taking pictures of their feet or driving around, taking pictures, whatever. Their cat's feet. I have to hear that's a thing now. And then AI itself is reshaping work, and we still don't know where this is going. So career assumptions as we know them are gone. So how do we respond to these collapsing career assumptions? How about we consider traditional or non-traditional employment models? So maybe you have someone who's like burnt out and retired and ready to retire, and they're just like limping to the end, like I'm going to make it. So maybe you can bring them back, right? What if you just want to go part-time? Don't leave. We need you to help the other person. I've actually seen this like with CFOs and things where the person they'll hire their replacement successor for like a complicated position. And then they'll have them work with the other person for 3 months. And then they'll start cutting down the person who's leaving's work schedule. And they'll have them come in 3 days a week. And then a month will go by, 2 days a week. And then a month will go by. However, the person taking over the complicated position is feeling 1 day a week. So I know one position where they had the CFO, he would come in 1 day a week for a whole year. Then he retired. He's like, I'm gonna retire. They hired his replacement. He stayed with them for a year. And then for the whole next year, he worked 1 day a week, hourly, just to come in and answer questions. And then that was it. He was out. But he gave them notice, I'm gonna retire. But go back to that graph that I brought up earlier. You know who is in the danger zone of retiring, so you can have conversations with those folks. Okay. Support this mid-career leave and return. So you got a really great employee who's gonna go hike the PCT, and you're just gonna say, goodbye, we'll never hire you back again? Or you're gonna say, all right, you're in a position where we really need to fill it, so can you put off your path for a minute and let us hire someone else? And then, or let us figure it out how we can give you that length of time. So we'll let you go with the rehire option, whatever. So think about that. How can you support this? And this is all going back to that flexibility in the workforce. Some places do offer sabbaticals, yes. So, and how do they work that out? They get if it's professors, they say, we're gonna have these guys teach your class while you're off on sabbatical. Same thing, this is no difference. So you might have folks that just wanna take some time off and have put themselves in a position to do it. You don't have to keep them on and pay them. You can let them go, but then hire them back later because they were good employees, you didn't want to lose them. So decouple experience and tenure. Maybe the tenured employees that you've had doing the same thing for 30 years want to learn new skills and do other things. Have you asked them? Maybe. So maybe think about internships for your tenured to learn new skills, or allow younger workers to lead early in careers if they possess niche knowledge. So maybe you need someone who has technical knowledge of like a brand new HRIS system that you have, or you want to teach other employees how to use AI, or someone who makes killer PowerPoints or whatever it is. So bring that person in for their niche skill and then give them other things that they can do, but kind of let them lead where their career progress is. You know what you need. Maybe trying to fit a round peg in a square hole isn't going to work. So how can you like change your positions, your job descriptions to get other folks in different things? Prepare for retirements. I know I've been saying this a lot, but internal rotations, cross training, bringing in new people, have them shadow these folks. Is that something that you'd like to do in the future? You know who your good people are. You're bringing someone in, you can see, or someone, their manager is pointing it out. This person can do more than what they are doing. So you know who is in your workforce that could possibly go further. Those folks can start shadowing these folks. So, and then evaluate your policies on degrees. This is talking directly about that lack of college. So if you are still recruiting and you have a knockout question that says bachelor degree or higher, have you checked your applicant tracking system and thought about, does this position really need a bachelor degree? Or some folks that we've ran into who use our applicant tracking system don't even know that question's in there and haven't even seen that all of these qualified candidates are getting knocked out. So just do a quick review of your job descriptions and your systems to make sure that you're not knocking out good people based on old policies where you require degrees for work that doesn't need them. They can be clean. And then can you substitute experience for a degree? So look for that experience instead of that degree as we get into this decline of folks who have degrees. Okay. Considerations and recommendations. This is just our considerations and recommendations about what you could do to increase employee engagement. And then that will increase your bottom line by having more productive employees who stay longer. Adopt these flexible work models if you can. Think about it. Have these slides so you can go back and look how that works, so that you allow them to balance their remote and in office in the workplace status. Cater to the majority preference. Not everyone's not going to be happy no matter what you do. If you're in HR, you know this. So if you have a large majority, if you run like a survey or you know, however you want to poll your employees, then you have that majority preference. Those are will help you start to put that together. Enhance remote work support. So you're gonna want to make sure you provide technology and tools for collaboration and communication, whatever that looks like for your organization. Some organizations use Slack, some use email, some have those team meetings once a week, whatever it looks like for your organization. Foster a culture of trust and anonymity. If you empower your employees by focusing on their outcomes, what they're doing, instead of monitoring their activity. So I can sit there and wiggle my mouse. If you have your, like, I don't know, movement monitoring system hooked up, that's fine, but I didn't do anything all day. I just went like this to keep my screen on. So actually set up KPIs that monitor activities, set up projects that have deadlines, set up whatever. So that's the way you monitor. And as long as they're getting them done, leave them alone.
KPI stand.
Key performance indicators.
Just
I didn't say it. I apologize. There, your job should have certain things that you have to get done. Yeah. So every week, and then that's a KPI. Regularly assess and adopt policies. So if you're going to start doing all these other things, the workplace is changing, AI is coming in, and it's going to change everything in 10 years, like the Industrial Revolution did in 100. So you're going to want to constantly assess and adapt policies and go back and redefine how your folks are working based on trends in the industry, all these polls, whatever you're looking at. One of the things I should warn you guys about is two things. One, 2026 Illinois Human Rights Act is going to require you to have an AI policy. If you're not aware of it, get aware of it. So they are putting that together right now. I just went into the Bloomington Normal SHRM chapter meeting, and they were talking about it on Tuesday, but I actually heard about it through a daily alert email that I get last year. So you will need to tell your employees how you're using AI, what it's being used for, what kind of decisions to make, and get their consent. So that's a policy that you're going to have in place. Don't worry. At the end of my slide, to get you ready for this, there's a link that you can click so that you can get AI governance checklist and sample policies. But that's part of regularly assessing and adapting. The other thing,
I'm gonna retire by.
right? The other thing that's coming into play, and you guys have all heard about the Paid Workers Leave Act in Illinois, right? So Missouri had that happen to them this year, and they were as freaked out as we were last year. But what you're not hearing about that actually has bipartisan support along with 4-day work weeks, and it's all about flexibility, is that there are now 13 states that have paid long-term leave acts. So these acts require employers and employees to pay into a fund that the state monitors and distributes. And if your employee has a like FMLA or ADA or qualifying leave for whatever reason, and different states have different rules, then they can submit to the state and the state will pay them while they're off. Different states pay different amounts. So, but now your employees aren't coming back when they're on leave of absence because they're not getting paid and they're broke. They're staying out because they're getting paid. But all of that is to keep people when they're sick or their children are sick or whatever happens, employed. So, and housed. So
Is
that
that gonna be is that mandatory?
in 13 states it is. Google long-term leave of absence policies in 13 states and you'll see them. It's Maine, Oregon, Washington was one of the first ones, New York, California, Colorado. I'm trying to think of the other ones.
And so the state matches what the employer put in?
The state matches nothing. The employee out of their payroll, so it's an administrative task for the employer to pull this money and send it to this fund. And then the employer has to pay a smaller percentage than the employee that they pull out of payroll, or not out of payroll, it comes out of payroll, that they send for each employee to this fund. And the state, when the employee reaches out, will see if they're eligible and then start distributing the funds back to them.
So the employer kind of becomes the
Disability insurance.
savings
Yeah.
account.
It's kind of like disability insurance, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, the state becomes the savings account.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is kind of like that, yes. But for qualifying events. So, and they're different in each state. And I know in Oregon, I had to learn a lot about this one. And it was 12 weeks for yourself or only yourself. I can't remember. It's only yourself or a family member. But then if you were pregnant, they had another act that you're allowed to stack that. They did away with the Pregnant Act and put it into the mandated LOA. And now you can have 26 weeks. So if it's a pregnancy related, that's 26 paid weeks. Great, right? Except for if you're the employer and you lost your employee for 26 weeks. But for people and flexibility and trying to understand what's going on in lives, it's great. And that's where we're going as a society. So I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to warn you. Get ready. Here it comes. Okay. Not all engagement is the same. And remember, if these people feel like you're flexible and you're helping them and they're going to stay engaged longer, because like empathy is this big new concept that people love. So employee engagement isn't one size all. It spans multiple dimensions. Remember, it's emotional, cognitive, and behavioral. Varies across resources, teams, and organizations. It's going to be different for all of you. You're not going to sit with them and get together a plan that's going to be the same, because what works for you won't work for you. It's going to be based on your organization and the people in your organization. Single approach isn't going to drive engagement across the board. You're always going to have to modify that plan. And that's why it's a good idea to do employee engagement surveys. Don't do them if you're not going to do anything with them. Do them if you want to know what your employees need and then develop action plans around it. And believe it or not, you can put your data into AI and it'll develop an action plan for you. So, why measurement matters, because then you know what's driving engagement in different employee groups. So you don't have to poll your entire organization with one study. You can put them into demographics. And wouldn't it be crazy if you did it by this? Now you know what the different ages want. These people might want something different than these people, or they might want the same thing and you might be surprised. So that, going back to that slide, pull that and look at your demographics in your organization. Okay. Understand what drives it. That will help you make meaningful improvements. And then use that data to pinpoint key engagement drivers. Is it leadership trust? This is always a big one. Peer growth, recognition, which is actually falling down the scale in favor of flexibility. So those are the main categories that people want. Here's some engagement minimums. Transparent pay strategies. Remember, we go back to Herzberg's model. You got to have pay. Open and effective communication, continuous development and growth, strong leadership teams. Train your leaders, train them on empathy, train them on compassion, train them on whatever, follow up with them. Leadership can be learned. Good leadership can be learned. Recognition and appreciation culture. You have that person that's coming into your workforce and no one's even talking to them and you don't know about it and all of a sudden they're gone. Some you can't even track. So make sure that you're creating a culture where people feel recognized and appreciated for what they need. Not, well, we pay you to work here, so just do your job. Or how about, hey, we appreciate you coming in here every day. This company wouldn't without you. Isn't that a nicer statement? Okay. Workplace flexibility and well-being. Flexible work options where possible. You got to figure out where that is. Mental health support and wellness initiatives. There are EAPs. Do you all have EAP plans? Yeah. All right. Respect for work-life balance. Can't expect people to give you everything. They have lives. Inclusive and collaborative environments. Psychological safety is important for all employees. There, you can do employee resource groups and inclusion efforts. Just now, make sure that you're more focused on inclusion than anything else. We all need to be valued and supported in our roles. Cross-functional teamwork and collaboration will get people talking to each other, connect your demographics, your generations. If you can set them on projects, they'll understand each other better. Instead of someone say, well, it's all the customer service guy's fault. Well, the sales team's fault. Well, it's production, that's their fault. Get them working on a project together, whatever that looks like. And that way they at least understand what's going on in the other departments. Purpose-driven work and engagement. I think we went through mission, vision, and value, like talk about this all the time. What's your company's mission, vision, and value? And how is that important for you and your employees? I have walked into many workplaces where the people I'm talking to don't even know what their mission and vision and value are. It's like, oh no. Okay. Employee involvement in decision-making. So it's their opinions, poll them, give them anonymous ways to submit and opportunities for impact and social responsibility. So that's the right approach. This is tailored action. And the takeaway is engagement isn't a blanket strategy. It's targeted effort. So that's, if you want to manage the team, find ways to engage all. Here's our conclusion, but what I really want, if you want those sources, references are here, and then if you want the material, AI, with that link, take a picture of this, you'll have the slides, or you can get it from that little scan code right there. Any questions?
That was great.